Welcome to Sacred Stories, where we explore the profound mysteries and unforgettable lessons of sacred scriptures. Today, we will shed light on one of the most intriguing and terrifying deaths recorded in the Bible: the death of Uzzah, the man who dared to touch the Ark of the Covenant. A simple gesture of apparent religious zeal led him to a terrible and unexpected fate. What really happened in that fateful moment? What did Uzzah do to trigger God's wrath? And why was the outcome so severe? Stay with us as we unravel the deep details of this tragic story and the lessons it still teaches us today. Our story begins in a moment of great joy for the people of Israel. After years of battles and challenges, King David had consolidated his kingdom, uniting the tribes of Israel and establishing Jerusalem as the capital. David, a man after God's own heart, was determined to bring the Ark of the Covenant to the holy city. This ark was the supreme symbol of God's presence among his people. Inside it were the tablets of the 10 Commandments, Aaron's rod, and the manna, relics that testified to the covenant between God and Israel. Transporting the ark was more than a political event. It was a profound spiritual act. Bringing the ark to Jerusalem meant that God would be at the center of the nation's life, at the heart of the people's worship. Thus, David organized a festive procession like never before seen in Israel. Musicians played lyres, harps, and cymbals, and the people danced with enthusiasm. The joy was palpable. The ark was being transported on a cart drawn by oxen, an apparently practical decision, but already fraught with danger. This was because God's law, given through Moses, specified exactly how the ark should be transported, only by the Levitical priests, using wooden poles to avoid direct contact. However, on that day, this law was ignored, a mistake that, though it seemed small, would have dramatic consequences. As the cart moved along Israel's uneven roads, the people followed in joyful procession. Enthusiasm filled the air, but one detail went unnoticed. The ark was not being transported according to God's commands. The fact that it was on a cart instead of being carried by the Levites was a violation of divine orders. Yet, in the midst of the euphoria, no one seemed to perceive the error. Then, in the middle of all the celebration, the unexpected happened. As the cart moved forward, the oxen stumbled over a rock in the road. The cart swayed, and the ark, the most sacred object in all of Israel, wobbled dangerously, seeming to be on the verge of falling to the ground. What should have been a moment of triumph and joy turned into a moment of tension. It was at that exact moment that Uzzah, a man walking beside the cart, acted reflexively. Seeing the ark in danger, about to fall into the dirty ground, Uzzah reached out and touched the ark and saw, a gesture that, to him, seemed like the right thing to do. But it was there, in that moment, that he made the fatal mistake. His intention was good, to protect the ark from falling, but what he did not comprehend was that the power and holiness of God could not be touched by human hands. At the very moment his fingers touched the sacred wood, a flash of divine power manifested. God's wrath fell upon Uzzah with an irresistible and swift force. He had no time to recoil, shout, or even think about what he had done. His muscles contracted, his breath ceased, and in the blink of an eye, Uzzah fell dead beside the Arkansas. Silence descended upon the crowd that, just moments before, had been dancing in ecstasy. What should have been a day of joy had transformed into a scene of horror. The people, who had been celebrating moments ago, were now paralyzed with fear. Uzzah, the one who tried to protect the ark, was now dead before their eyes. The question in everyone's hearts was, why did God act with such severity? David, the great king, was distraught. He could not understand why God, who seemed to bless that moment, had allowed such a tragedy to occur. He feared God's presence at that moment. The ark, which represented blessing, was now seen as dangerous. But the answer lay in the scriptures themselves. The Ark of the Covenant was sacred, and there were clear rules about how it should be treated. The ark was not just a common object. It represented the presence of God and His holiness. God had given very clear instructions that only the Levitical priests could carry it, and even they needed to do so using poles, without ever touching it directly. By touching the ark, Uzzah violated God's holiness. His intentions may have been good, but the command was clear. No one except those designated could touch the ark. David, fearful, immediately halted the procession. He dared not continue. Instead of bringing the ark directly to Jerusalem, David decided to leave it at the house of Obed-Edom, a trusted man, until he could understand what had happened. The ark remained at Obed-Edom's house for 3 months. During that time, Obed-Edom's house was extraordinarily blessed. His harvest flourished, and his family experienced abundance and peace. God's presence, when treated with the proper respect, brought blessings and prosperity. After witnessing these blessings, David understood that the problem was not with the ark, but with how it had been treated. He realized he needed to obey God's instructions completely. And so, when David decided to bring the ark to Jerusalem for the second time, he did everything according to the law. He called the Levitical priests, and they carried the ark on their shoulders, using the poles as commanded by God. Now, with respect and obedience, the ark was safely transported, and the presence of God finally reached Jerusalem. This time, the people celebrated with awe and reverence, recognizing that God is holy and that his instructions must be followed meticulously. The death of Uzzah, though tragic, left an eternal lesson. God's holiness cannot be treated as something common. Even if our intentions are good, we must follow divine instructions. God is holy, and his presence requires obedience and reverence. When the ark finally arrived in Jerusalem, David, filled with joy, danced with all his might before it. The king, who once feared what might happen, now understood that the presence of God brought not only power but also blessings and joy, so long as it was treated with the proper respect. The people of Israel, witnessing the return of the ark, celebrated like never before. Jerusalem was becoming the spiritual heart of the nation, and the ark, the symbol of God's eternal covenant with his people, was finally where it belonged. But the story of Uzzah would not be forgotten. The death of a man in a moment of disobedience was a lesson for everyone, a stern reminder that, although God is gracious and loving, his holiness is something that must never be disregarded. The divine wrath that fell on Uzzah that day left an eternal mark on the hearts of the people. This story challenges us to reflect on how we treat the sacred things in our own lives. In our effort to do good, do we sometimes forget to follow what God truly desires? Like Uzzah, do we sometimes think that our actions, even with good intentions, are above God's clear instructions? Uzzah's story is a dark reminder that zeal, without obedience, can lead us to unexpected consequences. If you enjoyed this story and want to learn more about the deep mysteries of the Bible and its powerful teachings, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Turn on notifications and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Uzzah's death was just, or was it too harsh? Stay tuned, because there are many more intriguing and mysterious stories from the Bible that we will explore together. Until next time, here on Sacred Stories, where the scriptures come to life.